Wait a second. You weren't going to put those instruments away without swabbing them, were you? Good, because you always need to swab a woodwind instrument. First, let's talk about the flute. For this, you're going to need your flute, a swab, and a cleaning rod. You're going to take your swab and you're going to thread it through the end of your cleaning rod. Be careful not to put too much of the swab through there because it can easily get stuck in your instrument and cause a mess. Remember, if your swab does get stuck, try to pull it back the way it came first. When we swab, we're always going to start with the foot joint. Remember, you're going to go from least amount of moisture to most amount of moisture. And when you play the flute, most of the moisture ends up in the head joint, so we don't start there. Next, we're going to do the body of the flute. Notice I had a little bit too much swab, so I had to pull it back a little bit to make it a little easier to get through there. One time I had a student get a swab stuck in the middle of the flute. I had to take apart every part of the flute and rip the swab out piece by piece before I could ever make it workable again. The last thing you do is the head joint. Remember, least amount of moisture to most amount of moisture. Next, let's talk about the clarinet. A big mistake I see is people sending their swab through their mouthpieces. There's no pads and keys on your mouthpiece, so it's a waste of time to swab that part. So, take off your reed. Notice I wiped off the excess moisture. That helps the reed dry out a little faster. Then I took the mouthpiece off. I turned my clarinet upside down because I always want to go least amount of moisture to most amount of moisture. And then I set the weight down the end of the clarinet, pull it through, and then I do it again. 2 times will ensure that you get as much moisture out of your clarinet as possible. Moisture is an enemy of the pads on your instrument. And remember, those pads are extremely expensive to replace. Now, you're going to have to replace them at some point. That's just life. But swabbing will make them last much, much longer. Did you notice that when I was taking the clarinet apart, I paid particular attention to that bridge key? I don't want that to get damaged as I'm taking it apart. Now here's a couple things to remember. Moisture is bad for your instrument pads. You're going to have to replace those pads eventually, but swabbing will make it last longer, so swab every time you play. Swabbing extends the life of that instrument, and an instrument repad can cost $500 to $600. Never force a swab when it's stuck, and always go from least amount of moisture to most amount of moisture. See, that wasn't so bad. I don't know why you guys complain all the time. It takes less than a minute to do that, and it makes your instrument last much longer, and more importantly, saves your mom and dad some money.